Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another UFC breakdown and predictions video. This week it's for UFC Fight Night Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier, UFC Vegas 75. Pretty good card overall, actually. I think it's honestly a better card pound for pound than last week's card, the UFC pay-per-view. So, pretty excited for this one. Kind of did terrible predicting and betting on that last card. So, trying to move forward on this card, make some money. And there's a lot of shows this week, man. There's PFL going on this week, ACA, Bellator, and the Bellator card has a lot of fights, like 16 fights. They got Yoel Romero on there. They got he's taking on Nemkov. They got Pitbull taking on Sergio Pettis. So fun card for Bellator for sure. I definitely would recommend going over the Patreon and getting the bets for everything this week. I already have quite a few bets for this card. I'm going to be looking into all those other cards that I just talked about and betting on those as well. So busy week this week in MMA like always usually, and this fight night card's actually pretty good, so I'm excited to break it down. And besides that, guys, hit the like button, put a comment down below. Let's try to get to 150 likes. Let's try to get some comments. That always helps the channel and always helps get this video out there to more people, and trying to get out there earlier this week, so make sure to hit that like button. Put a comment down below. I'd really appreciate that. But first fight of the night here, Zach Pauga. He's taking on Modestas Bukauskas, and it's going to be in light heavyweight. And this is kind of a low-level fight. Bukauskas, he just made his way back to the UFC. He got cut, went to Cage Warriors. He won the title over there, and then came back and was victorious in his return to the UFC, where he cast as a pretty big underdog against Tyson Pedro. He had to go over there to Australia, beat Pedro in his home country. And now he's trying to build even more momentum and take out Zach Pauga, who's kind of a middling guy who did well on the Ultimate Fighter, made it to the finals. He was up at heavyweight, which he is a little small for that weight class, and obviously he moved down to 205 and ended up getting knocked out in the finals against Muhammad Usman. And then he came down to 205, got a win over Jordan Wright, where he kind of just cage pushed him for the entire fight. And when you look at how these guys match up, Modestas is a lot, longer in terms of how he fights. He only has a 3-inch reach advantage, which isn't massive, but Pauga is definitely more of a guy that wants to get in close, uses boxing, and Modestas is more rangy. He accentuates the reach better. He throws kicks, so I think the reach is going to be a little bit more significant than 3 inches usually is. But Pauga actually has decent boxing. He has good hand speed and does a good job of countering with the right hand. He'll use the jab to get inside, and he's fairly technical with the striking, but he likes a jab to the body, which in MMA is very dangerous. That's what got him knocked out against Muhammad Usman. You're just very susceptible to being countered with that, and he is just pretty basic. He'll sometimes throw some kicks, but not that often, and he can be pot-shotted. He's a little bit hittable. I don't think his chin is the best, so those things are always a little worrisome, especially when you're fighting at a higher weight. And he isn't someone that has the wrestling to bring it to the ground, but what he is good at and what he used in his last fight and basically won the fight off that is just pushing guys against the cage, controlling them there, kneeing them, staying active enough that the ref isn't going to break up the clinch, and just kind of winning the fight that way. He did a good job landing a lot of slick elbows in the clinch against Jordan Wright, and he was able to just control them and pick up the victory. And his cardio is always good. He trains up there in Colorado, always has a gas tank on him. So he has some good elements about him in terms of he's pretty athletic, he has fast hand speed, he's pretty good with the counter right hand, and he has a good jab, and then he can push you against the cage, and he can keep a good pace, but he's not the most durable guy, and pretty basic. He's hittable, and he just doesn't have that ability to kind of change the game plan and do something different if he isn't getting his way. And I don't think he has the best punch resistance, obviously. But Modestas Bukauskas, he's kind of a guy that likes to stick on the outside, move side to side, pot shot you with straight shots, with kicks, and pretty good footwork. He's also an athletic guy that comes in shape for the weight, moves well, and definitely has the faster feet. He's just, I don't know if he has more athleticism than Pauga because both these guys are athletic, but he just moves a lot more in the cage than Pauga does, and he is good at just kind of touching you and moving so you don't really get to set up your big shots. And I think it's going to be a struggle for Zach to get inside, and I think that left hook and leg kicks are going to be there for Modestas, so he just has to be smart and avoid getting pushed against the cage and avoid kind of getting more in a phone booth type of fight, because I do think that Pauga has the better hands and will probably be able to land some pretty decent counters. But Modestas, he has good grappling in his own right in terms of anti-grappling. He has good get-ups. He's pretty hard to take down, and he's hard to hold against the cage. And you also utilize the clinch, work knees, and hold you against the fence and win fights that way himself. So I don't necessarily think that either guy is going to be able to be clearly dominant against the cage. So I think that that's going to take away Pauga's one of his ways to victory, and Modestas, I guess, where it's through holding in the clinch against the cage. It's going to have to be more of a striking fight. And if it's going to be a striking fight, I just favor Modestas a little more because I think he has more weapons. He's going to be moving more. He's going to be able to pull Pauga into shots. I think he's going to be landing a little bit cleaner, and he's going to be a little bit higher volume. So I'm going to go with Modestas Bukauskas in this one. I think he's going to be able to get the win by decision. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets the knockout in this one. He does have a lot of finishes, but I'm going to go with Modestas Bukauskas to get the job done in this one and win by decision, make it 2 wins in a row in the UFC, and we'll see if he can continue to move up the ladder. And continuing on to this next fight, we got Dan Argueta taking on Ronnie Lawrence. Pretty interesting fight here. 135 always has pretty good matchups. And Dan Argueta, he's coming down to 135, which is the weight class that I believe is where he's going to be the best. He fought at 145. His first UFC fights went 1-1. First one was a tough one. He fought Damon Jackson on short notice. Lost that fight, but had a good third round, and then his last fight, he went in there, used his wrestling to get the job done, and he's trying to make it 2 wins in a row, and he's looking to kind of bring the momentum that he had from his last fight into the 135-pound weight class. Taking on Ronnie Lawrence, who's going to be looking to bounce back from a loss, coming off over a year layoff, so he's going to have to perform here and look good. He's a little bit older for bantamweight, but I think he's still going to be fine and fight well if he has maintained himself and been still training and doing what he has to do. And he's coming off that loss to Salikhov Kakhramonov, but that guy is a beast fighter, and hopefully he can get back to the UFC soon. But Ronnie Lawrence, he started well in the UFC. He looked really good. He had a lot of hype. He was the favorite in that fight with Kakhramonov, and he's going to be looking to reclaim a little bit of that here. And this is a battle of two guys that are good wrestlers. I think on the feet, Ronnie Lawrence has a clear advantage. Argueta's striking is not very good. He's kind of just a guy that is a boxer-wrestler, but he comes forward real square, straight lines. He doesn't cut the cage off the best. He doesn't have the fastest feet, the fastest hands, and he is super durable. He could take a shot and keep on coming, but a very hittable guy. And when he gets inside, he does have nice knees. I will give him that. His knees are dangerous. And he has power in his overhands and his hooks because he throws heavy punches. But he really just wants to get connected to you, get you to the ground, and then use his grappling, either hold you down or end up finding that finish, submission or ground and pound. He's a grinder, so he has great cardio, and he can maintain that pace. And Ronnie Lawrence, he's far more dynamic on the feet. He's a guy that has great lateral movement, side-to-side movement, very fast, evasive, and then he darts in and out with these straight punch attacks. He has big punching power, and he also throws nice kicks. We've seen him sit down guys in the UFC, sat down Mana Martinez multiple times, and definitely when he can connect, he has that speed and accuracy, and he can put it right on the chin and drop you. And Dan Argueta has to be very careful because the guy is very durable, but if he keeps getting hit clean by Ronnie Lawrence, he could end up being knocked out for the first time in his career. And then Lawrence will throw a lot of spinning attacks, spin kicks, and he has a dynamic striking arsenal, but he has an issue if Argueta can actually back him up, get him against the cage, he's going to have a pretty good chance to take him down. I feel Lawrence in his last fight got taken down and held down, and he's really good at Lawrence timing the takedowns, and he can hit 4, 5, 6 takedowns in one fight and then eventually break a guy and start to work from the top position. But he could make some mistakes in the grappling when both fighters are fresh, and I think that Argueta has the better wrestling and grappling, and Lawrence, it would be better for him to use his striking to wear Argueta down a little bit, or potentially even get the early finish, and then if he needs to, go to the grappling later in the wrestling. And I do think he could take Argueta down, but it's just, if he ends up on his back, I think that Argueta will have more success controlling and doing more things on top than Lawrence did, and that'll give Argueta the best chance to win is from being in top position. But I feel like Ronnie Lawrence is going to be a little bit too dynamic on the feet, a little bit too much damage is going to be done, and I think Argueta may be able to get a takedown or two, but I think that Lawrence is going to also get a couple takedowns, and I don't think Argueta is going to be able to establish that dominance in the grappling for enough time that it's going to offset Lawrence's striking and offset Lawrence's offensive wrestling and things like that he's going to bring. So ultimately, I'm going to go with Ronnie Lawrence to win this fight. I could see him winning by first round knockout, or I could see him winning by decision. It's a tough one to call because it's hard to predict one of these guys are going to knock someone out at 135. And originally, I was kind of leaning that way towards predicting Lawrence to win by KO TKO, but I'm going to pick him to win via decision. Argueta's super durable. He's tough. If he gets dropped, I don't think he's going to look for a way out. I think he's going to try to recover. So I'm going to pick Lawrence to win this one by decision over Argueta and kind of get back on track. Hopefully we see him fight more often. That's the one thing about Lawrence is he isn't a very active guy. So hopefully he can start fighting more often and string some wins together, and we'll see him against some better competition. And this next fight, we got a women's fight between Teresa Bleda and Gabriela Fernandez, and I'm actually looking forward to this one, man. Pretty good fight. Both these girls had a lot of hype before they came into the UFC, and it's going to be a fight where they both have a lot of desperation, not trying to become 0-2. With Teresa Bleda, she was one of these girls that was a European prospect. She was one of the best European fighters for her weight, and she claimed a couple titles over there, came over, won on the Contender Series. And Gabriela Fernandez, she was able to come over to the LFA and was very, very impressive. She won a couple fights there, won the LFA title, and then they both had real tough fights in their UFC debuts. Teresa Bleda had to go in there with Natalia Silva, who was just a buzzsaw. It was a real rough fight for her. She ended up getting knocked out in the third round with a spinning back kick. And Gabriela Fernandez had to go in there with Jasmine Jasudavicius, who we're finding out to pretty much the real deal. She's looking really good and just kind of got outworked there, taken down and controlled. And she did a decent job of not taking a lot of damage on the ground, but didn't have the get-ups and didn't have the wrestling to stop Jasudavicius from taking her down. But this is going to be a very intriguing fight. I mean, with Teresa Bleda, she's kind of a similar style to Jasmine Jasudavicius, where she has the length and she likes to push the wrestling and grappling. When she gets on top, she's nasty, and she's kind of like a mean girl that brings that edge to her. But she isn't nearly as athletic or refined on the feet. I don't think her wrestling is nearly as good as Jasudavicius is either. And Gabriela Fernandez, she is a very, very impressive striker. If you ask me, I think she's one of the best striking prospects in the UFC for female fighters. I mean, the girl does a great job attacking the body. She's extremely athletic, super fast. She has great footwork side to side. She'll throw real nice counter crosses, 1-2s. She'll, like I said, mix it up to the body, to the head. She likes to finish a lot of her combos with either leg kicks or head kicks. She has pretty good power, and she has the ability to keep that movement and striking pace and volume up for 3 rounds. I've seen her do it before. She also can finish you and take you out. So I think Fernandez is someone that's pretty impressive as well. She's training with the MMA Masters, which is a camp that's been doing really well this year, especially with a lot of their fighters in the UFC. And on the feet, she's going to have a massive advantage. I mean, Bleda, she has a decent jab, and she's tough. I mean, she's willing to sit in there and look to exchange, but she kind of has that scarecrow a little bit about her, like where she's kind of like, mummified coming forward and real stiff, straight up and down, tall girl. And Fernandez should be able to move side to side on her and kind of just evade and tee off. I mean, I think she's going to be significantly faster, significantly better striker, and Bleda is going to have to take some punishment, get inside. And if she can get into that clinch against the cage and start to work the takedowns and get on top, then it could start to become, what the money line looks like, where Bleda is a massive favorite and she could seem like she's a big advantage, because on the ground, Bleda is a beast. I mean, the girl has good control. She does a good job working her elbows, ground and pound to open up submissions, and then she looks to finish fights. So both these girls have a killer instinct, but I think Bleda is a little bit more vicious on the ground, a little bit more vicious in the hunt of the finish at times. And cardio-wise, I kind of favor Fernandez. I mean, Bleda tends to get real tired. I've seen that happen in multiple fights, and she will abandon the wrestling or not push nearly as hard for it. And if that happens in this fight, it's going to be a rough war with Fernandez. And personally, I don't get the line. I think this fight should be much closer to a pick'em. I originally, when Teresa Bleda first came to Contender Series in the UFC, I was thinking she was going to potentially evolve to become like a real deal fighter, but I still could see that. She's very young, but right now, man, I mean, like I said, she kind of has that real, jank striking. I think Fernandez is way more athletic and be able to move around her. And after that last fight with Jasmine, she had to know, okay, I got to work on my wrestling, got to work on the get-ups, and she's at a gym where she could learn that. I mean, she's training with the Amanda Nunes and girls like that were at MMA Masters. So I got a good feeling that Fernandez is going to come in here and look a lot better than the odds indicate. And I'm going to pick her to get the win here. I'm actually going to pick her to win via third round KO TKO, which if you look at the odds, I think that's a pretty good bet, man. It's crazy odds. And Fernandez by finish or Fernandez by decision. I like Gabriela Fernandez in this fight. I think she's going to show out. I think she's going to show that her movement and striking is a lot better than people give it credit for. Both these girls, they had their UFC debuts, so you could attribute jitters and things like that to their performance potentially as well. And I think that Fernandez is going to be able to, even if she gets taken down, she might be able to threaten with guillotines and do things off of her back that maybe aren't going to be close to getting the finish, but they stymie Bleda's offense and they make Fernandez's striking differential stand out the most. So I got Gabriela Fernandez in this fight. I think she's going to pull off the upset. I think she's going to look good, and I think that she might be someone to deal with in the future in this division. And for this next one, we got a flyweight fight between Zhalgas Zhumagulov and Felipe Bunez. This is going to be Bunez's UFC debut. He's got a pretty tough fight. Zhalgas Zhumagulov obviously has a horrible UFC record on paper, but it's a little bit deceiving. He has a lot of fights that were up in the air, could have gone either way, and lost all of them. And he was supposed to fight a few weeks ago against another UFC newcomer, Brazilian guy, so he's gotten probably some good training in and been training for quite a while at this point, so he's going to be in shape and ready to go. And Bunez is going to have to be ready to match that intensity. But Felipe Bunez, he's a big athletic fighter. He's coming off winning the LFA title, and he has a good skill set on the feet. He stands tall, and he'll try to land the counter crosses, decent kicks. He'll throw round kicks to all parts of the body. He can even mix in some spinning kicks. And he can be inactive, though. And on the inside, he brawls, but I think he's going to struggle with the combination and body punching of Zhumagulov. And I think Felipe is going to try to hit takedowns and then backpack Zhumagulov in this one. He's explosive. He has pretty fast level changes. He's able to get most fighters down when he's fresh and he's strong. And on top, he has good control and the back takes. He has armbar and triangle setups from the back mount as well. But he can get tired, and guys that look to take him down can control him. He's too comfortable off his back, and I think that Zhumagulov would be smart to mix it up and try to get takedowns and see if he can work on top as well as use his striking. But Zhumagulov is a slick striker, man. I mean, the guy has good footwork, head movement. He's hard to hit. He stance switches. He has good counter punching. He rips the body to open up the head. And he is a guy that can eat low kicks, but he tends to throw single shots as well, and sometimes the judges don't like that style, but overall the guy's hard to hit, and I think he's going to have the edge on the feet, and he's probably one of the best wrestlers that Felipe has fought. I think he should look to mix it up and take down Felipe if he can, and Bunez may be able to take him down and get the back or get some control time, but Zhumagulov is a guy that's hard to take down with good get-ups. He's shown that and proven that against high-level wrestlers and grapplers like Amir Albazi and some other fighters that he's fought on the regional scene. And I'm going to go with Zhumagulov. I think his experience, cardio is going to bring him through on this one. It's obviously hard to trust him with that record in the UFC, but I think that the level of competition that he's fought and the level that he's actually fought himself, which I think is pretty high, and he hasn't necessarily been rewarded with wins for fighting at a high level, but I think that Zhumagulov's going to be able to get the job done by decision in this one. I think Bunez may be able to bounce back, but Zhumagulov's a guy that's tricky, difficult to deal with, and I think he can pick up the win here. And for this next matchup, we got another flyweight fight. This one's between two guys looking to bounce back from losses. Carlos Hernandez is the guy with the UFC victory. He got it in his debut. He got a split decision win over Victor Altamirano. Dennis Bondar came to the UFC, had some bad luck in his debut where he was actually looking like he was having a little bit of trouble, though, with Malcolm Gordon, and he got his arm extended. He didn't tap out. I don't think it was that, I don't think he injured it then, but he maybe weakened it a little bit, and then when he went to post or when he got taken down, he posted, and his arm just ended up giving out on him, and he had to take a pretty extended time off after that. He hasn't fought in over a year, so he's making his comeback here, and it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Hernandez, it's pretty obvious what he wants to do. He's going to want to keep it on the feet. He trains out of VFS Academy in Chicago, which has a lot of those real fun strikers to watch, and he has great footwork. He'll bounce in and out of range well, 1-2s, 2-3s. He has fast hands, and his kicking game is also on point. He'll throw kicks to all parts of the body. He comes in good shape, so he can kind of dart in, dart out for 15 minutes, but he does tend to overextend on his punches, give up takedown opportunities, and get clipped with counters. I've seen him wobbled in his Contender Series fight, but he's tough to deal with on the feet. He's sharp. He is usually defensively sound, and he's pretty clean with everything that he throws. And he's a good grappler. He's not really an active wrestler, but he'll time body locks at times, and he will look for takedowns against fighters when they're pressuring too hard against him. He was able to hit some takedowns on Altamirano his last fight, used that to kind of squeak out a decision. And on top, he's aggressive. He's fluid. He has good back takes. His takedown defense and get-ups are kind of questionable. He exposes his hips. He can give up takedowns. His Contender Series opponent hit multiple takedowns against him, and his get-up game is good. He doesn't stay stagnant on bottom, but he will expose the back to stand up. And against Dennis Bondar, that could be an issue. In his last fight, he got taken down early against Rodrigo Nascimento, got his back taken and got hit with the rear naked choke. And Bondar has a lot of submission wins. I don't think that Bondar is a guy that's as slick, and probably the likelihood of him hitting a real early RNC on Hernandez is not as high. But he has to up the takedown defense because the Ukrainian's a beast on the ground, and he has very fast level changes. He has a lot of finishes there himself. So if he can get his grappling going, I think it's going to be a hard night for Hernandez. But Hernandez knows what he has to do to win. If he could stop the takedowns, keep it standing, he's going to have a big advantage. And he has the cardio to fight for 3 rounds, and he's very successful if he can keep it on the feet in this fight, in my opinion. Dennis Bondar, he, like I said, is making his return after a year and 3 months away. He's 30 now, so hopefully he can, get going in his career if he wants to progress up towards the top of the rankings. He's skilled, and he should be able to compete if he shows up on point. He's light on his feet. He has good distance control himself. He likes to stand tall. He'll pressure, feint, move in and out, use the jab, and then counter with overhands. And he does a good job to use the jab and feints to back guys up, and then you'll take him down. When fighters overextend or chase him, his level changes are really good, and that's going to be, in my opinion, very pivotal in this fight. Defensively, he does hold his hands low. He can float his chin. His head movement and reflexes are very solid, but sometimes fighters can close that gap and land on him. He has good wrestling against the cage. His top control is also on point. Nice elbows. He could stay active, and he'll pass, transition. He likes to attack arm triangles. He has good back takes, rear naked chokes. His last fight, like I said, he got caught in that arm bar after getting a takedown, and Malcolm Gordon's a black belt with an aggressive guard. I don't necessarily think Hernandez is going to have the submission threat, but Bondar has good cardio. He's aggressive. He's a finisher. He's fun to watch. He's a guy that's kind of has a padded record, but he also has some pretty good wins. Like, for instance, he has a win over Steve Erceg, who we saw last week go in there and beat a top 10 guy. And I personally like Carlos Hernandez as a fighter. I wish the UFC would give him more striking fights, but this is a tough style matchup for him once again. I think he will be better with his defense after getting subbed quick in his last fight. Show some improvements in the grappling maybe, but ultimately I think Bondar's double. I think his chain wrestling is going to be the difference. Whether Bondar grinds him down and subs him or whether he wrestles him for 3 rounds, I think he's going to win this fight. And I'm going to pick Bondar to win via second round submission. And this next fight, this should be an interesting fight, very entertaining fight with Kang and Christian Quinonez. And we got Christian Quinonez, who's a 27-year-old prospect. He's making his second UFC appearance. He got a nasty first-round knockout in his UFC debut. He's one of the better prospects in the division. Christian is a well-rounded fighter. He's tall, lanky, he's long. He's light on his feet. He's pretty evasive. Good at sliding just out of range and countering with nice shots. He's a technical striker, good distance control, jab, left hook, 1-2s, 3-2s, clean, accurate, and he's fast too. Most of his work comes with the hands. He isn't really a big kicker, but he will throw some front kicks to the body. He can mix in some high kicks occasionally. He is smart. He doesn't really brawl, but sometimes he can be a little loose with his hand placement. Explosive fighters can close that gap and touch him. He is tough, durable, and usually is hard to hit. He has been knocked out twice. He's high volume. He pushes a high pace, and overall striking is very solid. And he can wrestle. He has a pretty good double leg. He can shoot multiple times around, hit multiple takedowns, and keep the same pace. He did get submitted with the rear naked choke against Victor Madrigal, and his takedown defense is pretty good. So as long as he doesn't shoot bad shots, he's probably going to stay out of danger in the grappling. Mr. Perfect is a great dance partner to show if Quinonez is the real deal or not. Kang's a tough vet with solid skills, a good record in the UFC, and if Quinonez can beat him, he's ready for a step up in competition. Kang, he has a similar striking style to Quinonez. He's tall, long. He's actually going to have a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. He fights long. He'll throw nice jabs, straight punches. He has good calf kicks. He isn't quite as mobile as Quinonez, and if they exchange, I do favor Quinonez's defense a little bit more. Kang is durable, though. He's a tough guy. He has good conditioning. He's only been finished one time by strikes in 2008, and that came via soccer kicks. And he also can time the double. His top control is pretty good, and he has okay back takes, but he doesn't have the best back control when he gets to the back. But he does have quite a few submission wins, none in a long time. I don't really think he's going to be effective or really active in looking for takedowns in this fight. I think it's going to be more of a striking battle. Kang usually always fights very composed within himself, and he can control the pace for 3 rounds and fight with good cardio. Takedown defense is average. He could struggle against great wrestlers, grapplers. I wouldn't be shocked if Quinonez came in here and tried to mix it up, because historically Kang has lost to a lot of guys that tried to take him down. But I think it's going to be more of a stand-up fight overall. I really think this fight could go either way, but I'm just going to take the younger fighter who I think will throw more volume in Quinonez. I would be, more confident in picking the fight goes to decision over anything. I think that both these guys are pretty tough, durable. They're going to be fighting defensively sound, and the winner of this fight I think could be either guy, but I'm going to go with the younger guy that I think is going to be a little hungrier here in Quinonez. And up next with this prediction, I'm going to be pretty quick with this one because I'm fairly confident in my prediction here. Got to go with Alessandro Costa in this fight. I think he's a great athlete. I actually think the guy has a chance to become a pretty solid UFC fighter. This is obviously a very hard weight class to make it in, but I do think Costa's good. The guy's got great athleticism, solid takedown offense, defense. He has good grappling. He has power. He's explosive, athletic. Jimmy Flick, he's retired, came back, looked really bad in his comeback appearance. And he's definitely a dangerous guy. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you go to the ground with Jimmy Flick, he could submit you from a lot of different angles, and he has a lot of different tricks he could throw in the grappling, but his striking isn't there. He's a guy that's been knocked out quite a few times, and I just don't think he's UFC level at this point in his career, especially at flyweight. I don't think he has the athleticism to compete. I don't think that he has the wrestling to get these guys to the ground, and he does have that submission ability where he can beat anybody on any given night if he can get to the right position and close the show. But I just think that's going to be an infrequent occurrence against most of these guys that are high-level fighters. And Costa has great grappling, his great wrestling defense, his game plan is going to be on point, I believe. And I just don't think unless he does something silly and lets Jimmy Flick submit him in a position, I don't see how he loses this fight personally. So I got to go with Costa to get this one done, and I think he'll win via knockout. In this next one, we got a welterweight fight between Nikolas Dalby and Muslim Salikhov, two older vets in the weight class that are still doing their thing and showing out here. Muslim Salikhov, I got to go with him, though. I think he's just slightly better everywhere at this point in his career. Obviously, we know about his striking. I think the left hook and just his ability to close the distance and land those sniper-like single shots with the hands, and then obviously having those killer kicks is going to be a little bit better than Dalby and his bounce in, bounce out, straight punches and kicks from the outside. I think Muslim's going to land the heavier shots. I think he's going to start to make Dalby a little bit hesitant to close the distance and engage. And for Dalby, he has to use his speed, close the gap, land those straight punches right on the chin and get out. We've seen Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos have success doing that. We've seen the Leech knock out Muslim Salikhov with that same game. So Nicolas has a chance, but I don't think Dalby is quite as crisp, and he doesn't close the distance as fast and sharp with as ill intentions as those guys do anymore. He's getting a little bit older, and I think that Muslim can also take him down as well. I feel like Muslim Salikhov's wrestling has came a long way. It's a little underrated at this point. I think that Dalby has okay wrestling offense, but I don't see him taking down Salikhov, and I think if Salikhov wants to try to take down Dalby, he can do that. Cardio is always a weapon that Dalby has, and he probably does have the superior cardio in comparison to Salikhov, but I think that Salikhov's counter ability and his striking is going to be able to control the pace, make Dalby not be able to utilize that weapon too much, and I don't think Dalby's going to be able to take him down. I think if anybody gets takedowns, it's going to be Salikhov, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Salikhov become the first guy to knock out Dalby in his career. Technically, Jesse Ronson did finish him with strikes, but that fight got turned into a no contest. I think that Muslim is very sharp. I think he's going to be landing pretty often with the hands, and I just think Nikolas Dalby's going to struggle to get going. I think Salikhov is either going to finish him with strikes at some point, or he's going to keep him in check for 3 rounds and win a decision. So I'm going to go with the king of spin here, Muslim Salikhov, to pick up another UFC win. Kicking off the main card, we got a fight I'm a little trepidatious about here. We got a bantamweight bout, Raoni Barcelos taking on Miles Johns. And Raoni Barcelos, he's, in my opinion, the far better fighter. Technically, he's better on the feet. He has better grappling, better wrestling, bigger guy, probably the more athletic guy. But the issue with Raoni is he's getting up there in age. He just got brutally knocked out. And his chin has not really held up the greatest in recent fights. So that's all a lot of stuff that's alarming. But he's taking on a fighter in Miles Johns that hasn't really progressed how you would think someone with his skill set when he first came to the UFC, athleticism and everything like that, would progress. He's still basically the same fighter that he was, or just a little bit more enhanced of a fighter that he was when he joined the UFC. And Raoni has way more weapons than Miles. What Miles Johns brings really is the jab. He has a great jab. I mean, some people call him Miles the Jab Johns. And then he will throw that big overhands. And he has okay wrestling, but he doesn't really have the ability to hold guys down. And he tends to get tired as fights go on. He's been finished in the second and third rounds in most of his UFC losses. And with Raoni Barcelos, we got a guy that super skilled guy, great striking. He mixes it up really well. He has good counter ability. He's very good at pressing you, staying in your face, using feints, fakes, opening you up, and then countering you when you try to go and hurting you. But he can be low volume, and like I said, his chin is kind of started to digress a little bit, and you don't know where he's at mentally in his career after getting knocked out by Umar like that. But if Raoni Barcelos comes in looking like Raoni Barcelos, he's going to get the finish, in my opinion, in the second or third round. The pressure that he puts on Miles Johns, it's going to get Johns tired. He's going to make Miles Johns miss big with the feints, and then I think eventually he's going to be able to land some shots that get Miles Johns out of there. Raoni Barcelos is an extremely dangerous guy, and he just has to let it go, man. He has to trust himself. He has to be aggressive, and as long as he doesn't get clipped on that chin and put to sleep, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility, just because I'm not as enamored with Raoni Barcelos as a prospect anymore. I think obviously he's getting past that age of prospect, and that happened a long while ago, and his chin is just not there for me. So I can't trust him 100% at the line, but I do think it's hard to pick against him, and him winning in the second or third round probably does have some value if you want to bet on that. And I'm going to pick Raoni to win via third round KO TKO. And this fight, this should definitely be a banger right here between Manuel Torres and Nikolas Motta. I think someone's getting knocked out in this fight, honestly. We got two guys that like to go in there, sit in the middle, and look to land those kill shots. Nikolas Motta is a little bit more composed from what I've seen. He likes to hang back, counterpunch. He has really great timing on the counter right hand. His left hook is his kill shot, and his power is crazy. I mean, the guy has one-punch knockout ability. He does tend to load up on a lot of his strikes, and he doesn't really... he'll throw combinations, like 2-3 punch combinations, but a lot of times it's one shot and done as well. And sometimes you can counter him when he's loading up on that left hook or loading up on the big right hand. But he has real solid timing. And if Manuel Torres comes into this fight like he did in his last fight, real wild, I think he is in big danger of getting knocked out in that first round against Motta. But the issue with Motta and his striking overall is he really only looks for the left hook and the right hand. He'll mix in the high kicks sometimes, but he isn't really a big diverse striker. He tends to be low volume. He tends to eat leg kicks, and he can slow down a little bit, especially if you could press him against the cage in the clinch or work takedowns. He isn't necessarily the greatest anti-grappler. In this fight, I don't think he's going to have to deal with any real grappling or wrestling exchanges, clinch exchanges too much. It'll probably be a striking fight, and it's going to be the fight he wants. So he's going to have the chance to get that early KO, especially if Torres comes in like he did against Camacho. But with Manuel Torres, we got a guy that he is the striking coach or one of the striking coaches for Entrim Gym. And I think that against Frank Camacho, he saw a guy that had a weak chin, that's an aging veteran, and he took advantage of that by starting out real hot, going out there and taking him out. This fight, I think he's going to be a little bit smarter. And with Torres, he has really nice jab. He'll throw real nice, tight, straight punches. He's long, rangy. He has nice kicks. He ends combinations with kicks real well. He's a slick striker, real aggressive guy too. Goes for the kill. And this is going to be a big step up in competition in terms of, I don't think he's really fought very many great strikers yet. But I do think with this one, Torres is going to be the fresher guy. He's never been knocked out. He has been submitted a couple times, but he's also going to come in with that Mexican cardio, training up there in elevation. That's never going to really fail him. And if this becomes a war where it's a battle of chins, I kind of got to lean towards Manuel Torres because Nikolas Motta's been knocked out 3 times. And I'm not really that confident, especially with Torres being the favorite and where he is, because he hasn't fought really anyone. Like I said, I guess Frank Camacho is a pretty decent victory, but Camacho was at the tail end. And Nikolas Motta does signify a pretty big step up, but I'm still going to lean towards Torres, and I'll pick him to win via first or second round knockout. I just think that he's going to be a little bit smarter and a little bit slicker with the striking in this one. He's going to respect Motta a little bit more. And at the end of the day, I think he's going to be the more durable guy. So when he lands, I think Motta's not going to be able to take it. If Motta lands a little bit, I think Torres might be able to return back and get the better of the firefight. So I'm going to go with Manuel Torres to win this one via first or second round knockout. And up next on the main card, we got a fight between an established veteran looking to come back and bounce back from a loss and an up-and-coming guy looking to get a win over a fighter that has proven himself to be very good in the UFC. Pat Sabatini hasn't fought in a while. He's coming off that knockout loss to Damon Jackson. Got caught early with a knee, couldn't recover, ended up getting finished really quick, like within a minute and 30 seconds of the first round. And Lucas Almeida came into the UFC a big underdog. He was fighting Mike Trizano, went in there, got hurt in the first round, almost got finished himself, but he was looking really good for that full round and then kind of got clipped and then came back, got right back to it in the second round, ended up catching Trizano and knocking him out himself. So he got a big upset victory, and now he's looking to make it 2 wins in a row, beat Pat Sabatini and get the job done. And it is short notice relatively for Sabatini. I think he got about 3-4 weeks notice. Lucas Almeida does have a full camp under his belt technically. He was supposed to fight last weekend against Hakeem Dawodu, but one thing about it is Pat Sabatini is the complete opposite of Hakeem Dawodu. Pat Sabatini is going to be looking to take Lucas Almeida down, grind him, and eventually find that submission or decision victory, and Dawodu was going to give Almeida exactly what he wanted, which was a Muay Thai striking fight. So hopefully Almeida has had enough time to adjust to this difference in opponent, and Sabatini has had enough time to train and be optimal and sharp on fight night. And it's a good matchup. I mean, like I said, it's a battle of styles. Lucas Almeida is a sick striker, man. I mean, the guy's incredibly fast. He comes forward. He has that slip and rip style, and he'll try to slip your shot and then come forward with a 1-2 or 3-2 and land clean. He's super good hand speed. He hits heavy. His left hook is vicious. He likes to mix kicks in at the end of his combinations. He's high volume, and he brings it. He's really a fun fighter to watch, but he does open himself up for counters. He's hittable. He sometimes, like in the Contender Series fight, he kept a pace in the first round that was not sustainable for him. In the second and third, got a little tired and ended up getting beat up in the second or third round. And also, I watched a few of his fights from back in the day, and I do see massive improvements, but his wrestling defense and his grappling defense from previous fights, I guess more his wrestling defense has just been really porous, like horrible, like novice level. So that's a very alarming thing when you're fighting a guy like Pat Sabatini, who I think is a very underrated wrestler grappler for this weight class. So Almeida's going to have that defensive wrestling on point to be able to be competitive here. He is a black belt, and he showed really good get-ups. He's gotten up really fast when I've seen him get taken down for the most part, but he's never fought someone like Sabatini that's a grinder, that sticks to you like glue, that can hit multiple takedowns, and it's definitely a different stylistic matchup and a step up from who he's fought previous. Pat Sabatini, it's just another day in the office. He's fighting another tough guy with a dangerous skill set, which he's done many times before. And Sabatini, he's one of these guys on the feet that he can switch stance. He likes to move around a lot. He throws some pretty nice kicks, and then he'll throw some counter hooks and overhands, and he throws with heat, but he is not really the most comfortable guy on the feet. He can be a little bit awkward. He's hittable, and his chin is a little bit suspect. So obviously I see a lot of people going on Almeida here as the underdog, and it makes sense because Sabatini, if he could get clipped by Almeida, then he's in trouble, and Almeida's a dangerous guy that brings it. He's definitely going to give himself a chance to win, but Sabatini, man, the guy is underrated wrestler, grappler, man. I think his wrestling is a lot better than people give him credit for. Great timing on his level changes. He has really, really good ability to hit trips in the clinch against the cage. His control on top is phenomenal, good back takes. If he gets taken down or he's even willing to pull guard, and his ability off his back to sweep or submit is also high level. And I think he's going to have a massive advantage on the ground in comparison to Almeida. And I just don't think Almeida has fought someone with this level of wrestling. I think Sabatini, unless he gets clipped, is going to be able to just show his dominance, get the takedowns, control on the ground. And I don't know if he's going to get the submission win just because Almeida's a black belt. I've never seen him really threatened or almost submitted in the fights that I've seen of his recently, but I'm going to say Sabatini gets the job done by decision. A lot of backpack time, and I just think people are counting him out because of a recency bias a little bit. And I think that Sabatini's going to be able to go in there and just out-wrestle Lucas Almeida. And this next one, this is a great fight. This is one of the best fights on the card with Armen Petrosyan taking on Christian Leroy Duncan. Christian Leroy Duncan right now has a lot of hype. He's a two-division champ at Cage Warriors, came over to the UFC, won his UFC debut. Kind of anticlimactic, though, with Dusko Todorovic hurting his knee very early in the fight. And Duncan, this is kind of his real UFC debut. That fight, he got the win, but he really didn't have to work for it. It was more just an unfortunate situation. And he's getting a tough guy to deal with, man, with Armen Petrosyan, a guy that is a pretty high-level striker. And this is going to be a fun kickboxing bout. I mean, Christian Leroy Duncan, I think if either guy tries to grapple and wrestle, it's going to be him. But Petrosyan has shown the guy maybe doesn't have the best wrestling, but hard to hold down. He has good get-ups and pretty solid fighter overall. He's a pretty decent guy. And but yeah, this is going to be a standout fight if you ask me. And it's a contrast styles. I mean, Christian Leroy Duncan, this is going to be his first striker test, really. I mean, unless he has a lot of amateur fights, so unless he fought a striker or two as an amateur, and I wasn't able to watch those fights, all of his fights as pro, man, all these guys are shooting at his legs, trying to take him down. And with Armen Petrosyan, that's not going to be how it's going to go down. He's going to be looking to stick and move, pot shot from the outside. And that's Petrosyan's game, and it could give Christian Leroy Duncan some issues because Duncan is a little bit stiff and plotty with how he comes forward. I mean, the guy does have that karate stance, and he can bounce in and out when he wants to, but sometimes he can come in a little bit kind of just slow and methodically. And Petrosyan's always bouncy. He's always moving side to side. He's looking to counter with the 1-2s, the 3-2s, get in, get out. He'll mix in some kicks. An issue in this fight for him is going to be he's at a pretty significant reach disadvantage, which Duncan is going to be able to maybe eventually start to time Petrosyan's exits with kicks or with spins or dangerous attacks that he can land because of his reach, and he also may be able to just keep Petrosyan at bay with some kicks and things like that and land and make it more competitive on the outside. But I honestly feel like Petrosyan is going to be the more active fighter, and he's going to be the guy that's landing more often on the feet. I've seen Duncan be a little bit hittable against guys that I don't think have the best striking even. And I feel as if with this fight, he could potentially be getting touched up quite a bit. But Petrosyan, we've seen that if you pressure him, eventually you could start to land on him. Gregory Rodriguez hurt him a couple times. He landed that head kick. And Christian Leroy Duncan is a guy that is very dynamic, and he's very fun to watch. I mean, he's someone that his hands aren't that great, but his foot speed and kick speed are very impressive. He throws a lot of front kicks, round kicks. His upper body movement and pull counters with the hooks and crosses are okay. And when he goes southpaw, he likes to throw a lot of lead leg attacks, spinning attacks from orthodox more often. And on the inside, he has nice elbows, spinning elbows. But I haven't really seen him in there yet with, like I said, a pressure boxer or striker. I feel like potentially Petrosyan could give him some issues. You know, I'm not really 100% sold on Duncan as like a future champion and all this stuff I've seen some people saying. And I definitely think his wrestling is suspect, which we won't see in this fight. But his striking also, I think, is potential to... Petrosyan has a potential to point him in this fight. But ultimately, I feel like Duncan, he's not going to have a guy that where he's worried about them shooting it on his legs. He can show his full arsenal, and probably at one point, I just think he's going to land a shot that gets Petrosyan out of there, probably in the second or third round. As long as he keeps that effective pressure and starts to get some reads, he'll eventually maybe be able to time a shot on the break or off the exit. But I'm not putting it against Petrosyan potentially winning a decision in this one. I think if it goes to points, unless Duncan gets multiple knockdowns or multiple big moments with shots that rock Petrosyan may be able to steal that. So I'm going to go with Duncan because I'll say second round knockout, but this is one of my lesser confident picks on the card. And up next year, co-main event. This is another fight I don't really have too much to say about. We got Arman Tsarukyan as like a minus 1,000 favorite. seems like no one really wants to fight him inside the top 5, top 10. So having to fight a guy like Joaquim Silva, who's outside the rankings, who's a dangerous fighter but shown some vulnerability in the past, especially against southpaws. And Arman Tsarukyan means business. Usually when he fights these guys that are kind of middling or lower level guys, like when he fought Christian Yagos and when he fought a couple other guys, Matt Frivola, he goes in there and really dominates them. So I think he's going to try to put a statement here against Silva. Silva's a guy that, it's not the easiest matchup. I mean, it's definitely dangerous. I mean, you look at his last fight, the flying knee knockout. So he has an ability to go in there and potentially land something real explosive or crazy on Tsarukyan and get one of the biggest upsets of the year. But the likelihood of that happening is probably very low. And the fighter that's shown a bad chin and been knocked out in the past is actually Silva himself. He tends to get a little wild sometimes. He can get clipped and doesn't really do the best against pressure. He has good jiu-jitsu, but if you could take him down and control him, you can beat him up. And this should be Tsarukyan all day. He's probably going to get the finish. He definitely should be fighting some higher level opponents at this point in his career, but it's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. He had that loss to Mateus Gamrot that kind of put him in a bad position because now a lot of people can kind of turn him down, and he's not really at a spot in his career where he has a big win streak or something where he can kind of demand a higher level fight. So he's going to have to get back on the train and, get these victories like against these guys like Joaquim Silva. So I'm going to say Tsarukyan goes in there, gets a first round knockout, and makes a statement, shows that, okay, I'm still here. I want to fight these higher level guys, and maybe eventually he'll be able to work his way back. Maybe his next fight, hopefully, if not that fight, the fight after, we could see him in there against top 5 guys. So I got Arman Tsarukyan all day. I mean, you see the money line and you see him such a favorite for a reason. Silva's an explosive, dangerous guy, so he's not totally out of the fight. He has a puncher's chance, and it's a little bit more pronounced than other guys because he has the power. But I don't see him finishing Tsarukyan like that, and Tsarukyan's probably going to get the job done inside the distance. And finally, we got the main event here. 2 top 5 middleweights, 2 guys that have fought for the UFC title. They're going to be showing down. They're going to be going at each other. And this is an interesting clash of styles. I mean, Marvin Vettori, most of the time when he fights, everyone knows what he wants to do. He wants to use that pressure, his cardio, his durability, and eventually grind you up, take you down, use his wrestling and grappling to control you on the mat or find that submission or finish. Usually he's more of a decision-based fighter. But with this one, he has a tough task here with Cannonier, a guy that's one of the biggest, strongest guys for the weight. He's a hard guy to take down and hold down. And I don't necessarily see Marvin Vettori being able to out-wrestle and just hold down and expect to beat Cannonier in that fashion. I think that he's going to have to rely on his striking a lot more, and that's going to be a scary proposition because Cannonier's the killer gorilla for a reason. The guy hits hard. He has one-punch knockout power, and obviously Vettori is a guy that's notorious for having the ability to take a baseball bat to the head, so I don't necessarily think he's going to get knocked out, but you always have to be aware of eventually that damage adding up, and I think that Cannonier is a guy that hits very clean, so if he can connect on a very clean punch, anyone can get knocked out. But the striking is going to be competitive just because Vettori is a lot more active. He likes to back guys up with the jab, and he has decent boxing, but I feel like Cannonier is just much more explosive. I feel like he likes to land those switch stance hooks and things like that, and his striking overall is very dangerous. I think that he does a good job of finding his moments, and the issue with him, though, is he could be kind of very basic. Like, you could see him sometimes only throwing the leg kicks or only throwing the counter hooks, only throwing the counter straight, and he doesn't really throw a lot of volume. He could be very low volume in fights, but when he throws, he usually connects. He's an accurate guy. He is someone that's economical, and he doesn't need a lot of shots to hurt you. Also, obviously, in this fight, he is going to have the ability to stuff the takedown, and if he does get taken down, get back up to his feet, keep that same cardio output that he did in the first round, in the 5th round. That's one thing that you never have to worry about with Cannonier or Vettori. Both these guys don't discount you in terms of coming in shape. They're always both in great shape, and they come in ready to go. And ultimately, I'm slightly leaning towards Jared Cannonier in this one. I don't like how Marvin Vettori looked in his last fight. I feel like he regressed a little bit. And I don't know, maybe Robert Whittaker kind of broke him, man. I mean, you look at that fight with Izzy, the 2 fights with Izzy. I think that he felt like he had ways to win those fights, and then Whittaker just kind of embarrassed him, dominated him, showed him that you aren't even on this, second best fighter in the world level, and that could have messed with him mentally. He was able to get the win over Roman Dolidze, but it wasn't the same Marvin that I'm used to seeing, and that was another matchup where he had to deal with a guy that not necessarily had the takedown defense and get-ups that Cannonier did, but had such a dangerous submission game off his back that Marvin didn't want to deal with it, so he kept it striking and had to have a striking fight, and probably it should have went the other way to Roman Dolidze. And I think Cannonier is a cleaner, better striker than Dolidze, and I feel like he's just going to be able to slightly outstrike Vettori. I think it's going to be competitive because Vettori may be able to get a takedown or two, but not really any top control or any real success in terms of ground and pound or submission threat. And Cannonier is going to be maybe a little bit out-volumed, but I think he's going to be landing the much cleaner shots, and I feel like he's going to be able to get the job done by decision in this one. I'm going to go with Cannonier to get the victory. I ultimately believe that he's just going to be a little bit too clean on the feet. I don't think that we're going to see a lot of takedowns and control time from Vettori, and that's how he usually has to win fights. So I'm leaning towards Jared Cannonier with the slight upside in this one, going in here and getting the victory. He needs to win to stay kind of in contention in terms of staying in title contention, staying in contention of being in that top 5, top 10, because a loss would really push him back. A loss for either guy is a pretty bad loss. So this is a pivotal fight, but I'm slightly leaning towards Jared Cannonier to get the job done. I think he's going to be able to be just a little bit better in this fight. So there you have it, guys. That's a full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC Fight Night, Jared Cannonier versus Marvin Vettori, UFC Vegas 75. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something from this video. As far as my most confident pick of the week, I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan. For the parlay of the week, I'm going to go with Alessandro Costa. I'm going to go with Alessandro Costa and Modestas Bukauskas. And for my most confident pick, I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan. So thanks for watching, guys. If you want access to breakdowns for Bellator 297 this week, for LFA 160, for PFL 5, for ACA 159, for Octagon 44, I'm going to be trying to put out as much content, as many bets as I see fit on those cards. So definitely make sure to check out patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru. Support the channel, keep the channel going, and win yourself some money, hopefully. And really appreciate everyone that's already there. Really appreciate everyone that hits the like button, comments on this video. The more interaction, the better. And thanks, guys, for supporting the channel for all this time. Really appreciate you guys, and I'll be back soon breaking down another fight card. Stay tuned to the channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.